Hi everybody, welcome to our podcast. We are Tiger Talks.
I'm Mackenzie Doherty.
And I'm Allie Kramer. Today our topic is seasonal stress, and our wonderful guest is Miss Stanton.
Aw, thanks. Okay, so this time of year, many people struggle with seasonal stress and or depression, so we wanted to know more about it, and we looked up seasonal stress, and we found something called seasonal affective disorder, which is a type of depression that's related to changes in the seasons.
So the main thing that we want to start out asking is, do you experience seasonal stress?
I do, absolutely. I have what is called clinical depression, so that's the fun year-round one. And then the SAD, or the seasonal affective disorder, which I think it's ironic is called SAD, it definitely hits me this time of year. It's so dark all the time. You know, it's kind of hard not to be affected by how dark it is.
Especially with the sun setting so early.
Yeah. I mean, I drive home in the dark practically, you know, so I definitely notice it. And then the colder temperatures keep you inside more, and I think you kind of tend to isolate a little bit more, and that has an effect,
So other than that, what are some of the main, causes for, extra stress around this time of the year?
I would definitely say the holidays, right? I think there's pressure to do them a certain way, to keep up traditions, and then there's just never enough time, right? It never feels like there's enough time. So it's really hard to prioritize when you have so much you feel like you're supposed to be doing. So I think that definitely is the hugest stressor.
Yeah. So then, the expectations that people have for the holidays, definitely makes a bigger effect on it than everything.
For sure, yeah. You're expected to do that stuff, so.
Why do you think seasonal stress is, such an important thing around this time of the year, one of the big...
To talk about?
Yeah.
I think to normalize it, make sure everybody knows that it's normal to be stressed out this time of year, and that we kind of have to acknowledge that we're stressed out in order to, let some of those expectations go and hopefully get through the, we can't help that it's dark outside, but we can try and, connect with people more and try and take some of the expectations out of it so it's not so stressful.
Does seasonal stress affect your teaching?
I would say so. I think that, the population of students that I teach is incredibly diverse in terms of home life and, what they celebrate and stuff. And so it's hard to know what they're going through. It's hard to know how the holidays affect them. And it's just hard to react to that properly. And I'm always looking to be super supportive and to try and help with some of the stress. But if I'm feeling stressed myself, it makes it a little harder to, my cup's not as full as I'd like this time of year, to use that analogy. And I try and fill it back up every weekend, but it's full of holiday stuff now. So, the stress builds up for me, it builds up for students. So I definitely notice it, and I definitely try and, despite the fact that we get these breaks, right, that are supposed to be so relaxing, I try to take it easy on the students this time of year because it is hard, and I never know what they're going through.
So, you've mentioned that you do see it in your students, and you help out with just taking it easy. Is there anything else that you do to try and help with it?
I am a big proponent of making sure that kids are fed and have good sleep before I try and teach them math. So, I tell kids everyone gets one. Every once in a while, sometimes students will get two, but I'm just talking about days where I basically let them have a nap for my class because it is really hard to fight that type of fatigue. And, I don't ask because I don't want to be nosy why exactly they're so tired. Maybe it is self-inflicted. I don't know. But if I have a kid that's normally, one way and, maybe more positive, and they come in and they're so slumped and they can't keep their head up, I let them take that time to sleep. So, and then snacks. Those always help. People love snacks.
And then why do you think it's important that you are so open about your mental health with your students?
So they know it's normal. It's not a big secret. It's not a what is that word? The stigma around it, that it's this, someone with mental health issues is crazy. You're not crazy. Your brain chemistry is different, and you have to deal with that on a daily basis on top of all the other stuff that you have to deal with. And so I hope that people that do deal with mental health stuff know how tough they are for that. So that's my goal.
Okay. What do you do to help make your seasonal stress better or a little bit lighter of a load with it?
I have to remind myself that I don't have to do certain things. I try and, so this is actually, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. So the way that you think can affect the way that you feel. So I tell myself my thoughts, I say, this is not a must do, you know, so I try to focus really hard on prioritizing and making sure that me being okay and willing and like able to deal with my daily load comes first, which is really hard to do because that can be seen as selfish. So I have to make sure to check my thoughts and to make sure that I'm always making sure I'm okay. I said made sure a lot, but you know, gotta make sure.
Yeah.
So.
And then do you think it's important to put yourself first during this time of the year?
Yep, that's that prioritizing. You need to make sure that you are okay. It's that filling your own cup so that way you can help fill others. The whole type of mentality. It sounds so corny and hokey sometimes, but it is absolutely important. You need to take care of yourself.
Yeah. What tips would you give someone that is struggling this time of year?
I would say try to get outside. I know it's freezing, but that's part of the reason I think people experience SAD and that seasonal depression is they're not outside getting that sunlight. And just sometimes that hit of cold air can totally just change how you're feeling. And then trying to exercise, this is one that's hard for me too, but moving and trying to, you know, get endorphins flowing that way. The other one is just connecting. So trying to make sure that you don't isolate yourself too much because you're feeling so sad. Like, it's okay to sit in your feelings sometimes. Sometimes you have to. You have to just sit there and let them pass. But if you are wanting to feel better, you need to do those things that can feel hard. And that includes reaching out and talking to people and just keeping connected to the world so you don't float off into anxiety land, you know?
So we wanted to like do a little bit of background research before we did this podcast or this episode, and with like tips was like a big thing. So from Mayo Clinic, their tips were acknowledge your feelings, reach out, be realistic, set aside differences, stick to a budget, plan ahead, learn to say no, don't abandon healthy habits, take a breather, and seek professional help if you need it.
Those sound like great tips.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like the one about the budget. I think that applies more to, you know, kids that now have a job, and sorry, students, you weren't kids, you're practically adults. But you know, you have these jobs and you want to do something for Christmas, and then as an adult too, I know with my kid, the budgeting for Christmas can definitely add to stress. So just taking a moment to plan that stuff out, I think would definitely help. So that's a good one.
One thing on the tips that I really liked is like setting aside differences. So like people that have like families that don't necessarily get along, it's kind of hard for that to, I don't know, for everyone to get along. So then it's stressful for them, especially just because they're kind of like that middle ground. So I like that one because it can cause a lot of stress for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I really like acknowledge your feelings and like learn to say no, because at this time of year I really think it's important and that you should be selfish, because you really just like need to make sure that you're okay before you can help others.
Absolutely. And it sucks that it's seen as selfish, but maybe you just have to own it at this point. You're like, well, that's what I'm going to be then, so that I can be okay.
And a lot of people have this like idea that around this time you're supposed to be super happy and like loving the holidays and just really holly and jolly, but it's really hard when there's a lot of other things that just go on around this time.
Yeah, and you're valid for feeling whatever you feel.
Yep. I don't like when negativity is suppressed to the point where it's unrealistic. You know, that does feel very invalidating. Like you're trying to ignore these feelings you're having. You can't just squash them with positivity.
Yeah, I hate when people are like, you have to be happy during this time.
No.
When you really aren't.
Nope.
It just makes you feel like you're hiding it, which is suppressing it, which is making it worse in the end.
Oh, for sure. And comes back to those expectations. You know, you're not expected to be happy and holly jolly this time of year. You know, I mean, you are, but you have to tell yourself, like, it's okay if you're not.
Yeah, like Christmas is 2.5 weeks away, and honestly, I have not thought about anything about the holidays, really. It's just not on my mind.
Yeah,
so.
and it probably stresses you out a little bit when it does
creep
into your mind, so then it gets pushed away again.
Especially just with school on top of everything, too.
I know. So. School gets really intense right now because, and it's with that break coming up, you know, they're like, well, let's get all that info into their heads, you know, and I feel that pressure, too. So
Yeah.
It
But
feels
we'll
like,
get there.
again, like the end of the trimester, right
Yes.
before a
Yeah,
holiday,
but
trying to
it's-
get everything in.
Even though the trimester goes until like March, it still feels like that crunch
Right.
time.
I had to stop, and when I was planning out the rest of my lessons until break, I had to stop and remind myself of that, which is a relief because I was looking at like a really full couple of weeks until then, and that is not conducive to good mental health, especially with students being so stressed.
And then just students are all wound up because they're ready for the break and ready for the
for
holidays.
sure. A week and a half off? Yes,
Yeah.
please. Like, everyone is really looking forward to that.
I'm excited to take that as like a break for myself and just kind of use that and just say, no, I'm not going to sit there and work. I need that break.
Yes.
Yeah. Like this year, we're only going to one family's house, and we normally go to two.
Okay,
so
that
I'm gonna,
helps a
like,
lot.
Yeah, I'm going to get more time to myself and just, like, really, like, think about how I've been feeling lately and what I've been doing, which is, I always think, like, reflecting is such a good thing to do.
Definitely. And when you feel like you're sprinting for weeks on end, trying to get through the end of the, school for the year, it's really intimidating to deal with all that. So you need that time to breathe.
And so a lot of like the symptoms they have for holiday stress on here is just like anxiety, sadness, headaches, inability to sleep, irritability, and then also body aches. So I think one that could be like the most like noticeable is the irritability or the inability to sleep, and that's why so many people can be tired all the time, especially with it being dark almost constantly.
Yeah. And then it being chilly out too. I know like having a cooler room is supposed to be ideal for sleeping, so I wonder if that doesn't help either.
Yeah.
But yeah, not being able to turn your brain off to fall asleep is a really helpless feeling, especially when your body's tired and you know that you need the sleep and you can't. So that is a very frustrating added stressor.
Yeah, I relate to the anxiety symptom a lot because I already struggle with anxiety, and like looking back at like Thanksgiving, I'm realizing like how uncomfortable and anxious I was the entire time, which I hate because like they're my family, but I don't see them very often, and it just made me so stressed.
And it's hard to, like, I like that you guys did look at this list of physical symptoms, because it's really hard to separate, like, you can tell yourself, like I was saying, that cognitive, think different. You can tell yourself all you want that you're not going to be anxious, but anxiety is a physical reaction, and your body thinks that it is dying. Like, honestly, it's like panic mode. So it is really hard to counter that. So I feel for you.
Yeah, and like for me, it's hard for me to shut my brain off to sleep, and then as soon as I don't sleep, I like am just in a bad mood. I'm not like not fun to be around. So I guess that's something that I kind of deal with the most, just because I also get like anxious about having to deal with family and families that don't get along, and then being kind of that middle ground, and it's hard because you want to be with both.
Right.
So.
That's the split family dynamic, and all that can be incredibly stressful for kids. I don't know, everyone thinks, oh yeah, 2 Christmases, whatever. No, that's it's still really stressful.
Yeah. Well, and seasonal stress and things like this can affect anyone like at any age, even like younger children, and I think that a lot of students in our school experience it, and I can tell like sometimes when my peers are kind of off around this time of year. So that is just something that like I notice. And then they have some mindful tips on Hopkins medicine. So like accepting imperfection, everything's not always going to be perfect. You kind of just have to roll with the punches in a way. Don't lose sight of what really counts. Being together as a family, sometimes that can be stressful, but at least you're together, especially with COVID and everything. People couldn't be with their families for a while.
Yeah.
Respond with kindness. Sometimes you kind of want to lash back at people if they say something rude, but you never know what someone else has going on. And rethink your resolutions. So I'm not sure what direction they were going with that, but that kind of just makes me think. I kind of, when the new year's coming around, like think about what you actually want to work on in the next year on yourself. I can see that.
I also wonder if they were thinking about you had mentioned some other tips, and one of them was setting aside differences. I wonder if that's what that has to do with.
Yeah.
If your resolve is to, or you're resoluted to being just this certain way. So I'm wondering if they interpreted that like that. But either way, you need to, look at yourself and do a little introspection. And, with responding with kindness, too, that takes a lot of self-control sometimes if you feel attacked. But you have to sometimes, let your walls down, your defenses, and, start from a place of kindness.
Yeah.
But I really liked that first one. I remember asking it, so what was that first one?
Accept imperfection.
Okay, so that one I love, and I try and push this with students a lot because you are in 5 different classrooms being told that you have to prioritize 5 different things. And it's really hard to know what you are supposed to prioritize, when, and how the heck you're supposed to do it all at once. And I think what doesn't get talked about is the fact that it will never all be done at once. So in terms of imperfection, that's my big stressor is, how can I make everything perfect? Because then I won't feel stressed. Well, that's a stressful ideal because that's not going to happen. So I tend to stress myself out thinking, if I do this, I won't be stressed. Well, life is not going to be all done at the same time. Some things are going to suffer, some things are going to go better, and you just kind of have to roll with it. So you definitely have to accept those imperfections.
Yeah.
Can't do it all at once.
I think one of the really big takeaways from all of this is just knowing you're not alone and, like, your feelings are valid and that, everybody feels this way almost at least once during the year. So you kind of just need to remember you're not alone. It's okay to feel this way. And, yeah.
Like, it's okay to rely on people when you really need to or whenever.
And reaching out to people and that knowing that they've probably gone through it too, but you just have to take that first step to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm going through this. That is the most terrifying part by far. But most of the time when you do that, the reaction is, oh my gosh, me too. It's because, especially at this age, you guys are all going through some stuff, like really heavy stuff. So you guys get real stressed out. I feel it, especially this time of year. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Of course. Thank you for coming and discussing with us.
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics. So I am always happy to talk mental health. And if anyone ever needs anywhere to just sit and talk, and I will validate your feelings all day. Because sometimes that's all you need is to know that what you're feeling is okay and it's not wrong. So glad to be here.